Today lesson, we learn construction cost, regulation, and liabilities. And it will be more conceptual for the last lesson of the second portion of our class. So we have three learning objectives: identify regulation, standards, and construction projects, and explain the rules for project participants, and classify liability in the engineering and construction processes. So with that, go to the slides. So rules for project participants, we have basically three types of the rules. The first one is laws, statutes, and regulation for of the government agencies. So that's something Mr. Wilson's our first guest lecture discussed about the statute laws that regulate our engineering and construction projects. And then we have a tort law, and the last one is contracts. So those are the three major rules for project participants that involve as the owner, as the engineers, as the designer, as a constructors, as the subcontractor supplier in engineering and construction projects. So let's talk each of them this rule. The first one, we will talk about the laws, statutes, and regulation in the government agency, and then we briefly discuss the tort law and the contracts. So let's talk about the laws, statutes, and regulations of the government agencies. In those laws, statute, and regulations of the government agencies, we can further classify into three major laws. The first one, the environmental laws, commercial laws, and employment related laws. So let's talk about environmental laws. As many of you already know, especially you in the major of environmental engineering, you have heard all of these environmental laws. So I just want to list out, and any project that have some impact on of these areas may need to get the permit, get the approval from related agency that make sure the project, the new development or the change in the current development meet the requirement for this law. So the first Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, it happened in Florida, Panther, etc. Federal FIRA, Freedom of Information Act, National Environmental Policy Act, Oil Pollution Act. We talk about fracking or offshore drilling, things like that will related to oil pollution act, pollution prevention act. So all of that are environmental laws, and if any project that affect in those area need to get the permit or approval on that. Then continue with other federal environmental laws: Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensations and Liability Act, Superfund, so for the brownfield, etc. Toxic Substances Control Act. So all of that, if you go to this EPA link, you can see what apply for the engineering and construction sector that related to federal environmental laws. And of course, go down to the state, you have a state law. For example, Florida is ruled by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. So those you have to deal with state level as well. So those are the environmental laws. Now go to the next type of law is we talk about the commercial laws. So there are major commercial laws that we at engineers, at the contractors, at the owner in the engineering and construction project will be affected. The first one is the Mechanics Lien laws, and it can apply at federal, if it's federal money, federal buildings, or state Mechanics Lien law, the Federal Miller Act, and the various state Little Miller Act. So all of that related to the lien. So what a lien is about? So it basically Mechanics Lien is the right of the people that supply the labor or material to improvement of properties, and they have the right in that the title of that properties. So what does that mean? So when you hire someone just in the house, you hire someone to uh, renovate your house, for example, and then that he or she will hire another uh, subcontractor to renovate your house, and then you pay for the people that you sign a contract, but that people fail to pay for his or her subcontractor, you may be liable for the other contractors, the other subcontractor, because they can file a lien to your properties. So when they file the lien in your properties, we may not be able to use that until we settle the dispute. So it's always important to consider the lien liability in that set the lien law, even at the residential improvement in our personal properties. So how can we get away with that liens? And you can see any people, engineers, design for the project, the owner fail to pay, they may file a lien on that properties. The people supply the labor to that properties and the owner fail to pay, they can file a lien in that properties that prevent owner from using that properties. Or the people provide the material, supplier, and the contractor fail to pay, they can file a lien to that properties, and the owner cannot be used that property, even he paid to his contractor, but the contractor failed to pay for his suppliers, is failed to pay to its subcontractor, then the owner may be in trouble with that if your subcontractor supplier file a lien in his or her property. So it's very important to ensure that you can get away with the mechanism lien. How can we get away? You can see a few things that people do, just like have a lien waiver. Lien waiver. So before the owner pay to the contractor that he signed the contract, we will talk about the contract later on. But then when he signed contract and he going to pay for certain portion of project based on the milestone of the progress of the project, he need that contractor get the lien waiver from other suppliers, other subcontractor that provide the material, provide the labor to that contractor, so that when you get on the lien waiver, you can now pay for the contractor that you sign a contract. So if something happened, the contractor failed to pay to its suppliers or subcontractor, then you can get that lien waivers so that your supplier and subcontractor cannot file a lien in your properties. The second option people talking about is payment bond, payment bond. Okay, so what is that about? So before start paying, you have a contractor issue a payment bond from his or her bank or from his or her insurance company, payment bond, and with the amount that you are going to pay for that contractor. So when they issue the bond, the payment bond, you can pay him or her. So what happened if that contractor failed to pay to its supplier and subcontractor? The supplier and subcontractor can file a lien on your properties, the owner properties. Then you can get that payment bond to the contractor that you sign. You have a contract, bank or insurance company. You get that payment bond to them, and you get the money, and you can pay for the supplier and subcontractor that you don't have a contract with, so that can release the lien on your property. So those are the mechanism liens concept. The second commercial law that we talking about is the state engineering and contractor license laws. So what is that about? You can see when you already submitted project one, and in that project, I asked you to, in the bid, right? I asked you to provide a list of subcontractor, list of suppliers. So basically, that go to the state subcontractor listing law. So it means that we talk about the third point here, subcontractor listing law. When you put the bid, you need to propose who are your subcontractor suppliers, so that the owner, if the bidder, if finally eventually awarded the contract, uh, the owner know who are the subcontractor going to do for the work. If the subcontractor supplier that fail to show up, the contractor can get approval from the owner to change the subcontractor and supplier. And go back to the second point in here, state engineering and contractor license law. No one can do without a license. We engineer have a PE license. Contractor itself have a license in even certain specialties. So that we need to have a license. And that you already know, we talk about that, right? So engineering license. At the personal level, we have a professional engineer license. Company, they need to have a license whether they be able to design certain type of project, bridge, wastewater treatment, etc. Contractor license, to what level that project that they can able to do, whether residential only or commercial, institutional projects, so that a contractor license. The last point in commercial law that we are talking about, the uniform commercial law. So that you can see different states have different law in terms of transactions. We buy in our project in Florida, we may buy the material or the air conditioner from Ohio. We can buy the roof from California. We can buy tile from Montana. So all of that cross the state border. Then the uniform commercial law ensure that that transaction is smooth between the state. Even different states have different commercial law. So that is the uniform commercial law. The last one of the statute regulatory that related to government agencies is the employment related laws. And what are the major employment related laws? The first one is the National Labor Relation Act. So that, or Warner Act, it basically allowed the workers establish the unions, and it depends on state as well. So that is the national, it means the federal level. The one that you, the project that I talked to you at was sport project in Indiana. When the project, before the project start, the contractor had to go to Washington D.C., where the union located, agent located, to discuss, to negotiate, to be able to get enough the union workers to mobilize to that areas to do the project, because that a big project, you need the labor even outside that local areas. And it depends on state. Some state is more with the open shop, like Florida, so it don't need to be a union. Some state with some federal or state money projects is more with the union labors, Wisconsin, things like that. But it recently changed, and you can see some dynamics. So that, and even the faculty in Florida, we have a UFF, United Faculty Unions, represent for the faculty throughout the U.S., throughout the Florida university system. The next one is the Davis-Bacon Act. So it established the minimum wage for the federal funded projects. So let me go to that one to show you how to determine the minimum wage. If you go to the link that I show in that slide, the Federal Bacon Act, that go to here, and if we go down the wage determination, so search for the wage determination, Davis-Bacon Act, select the minimum wage for, and it depends on the area. If we search for Florida, go to the county, we search for Lee County, and of course, in your state, you can building time. For example, we do the wastewater, things like that. It can be select heavy, and it show you the what are the wage determination. For example, here, if we go there, we are about to do the project It revised just recently, and you can see October 2020, and you can construction time heavy, and it will determine in Lee County, if you hire the project that related to the federal money, what should be the minimum wage for certain time of worker. For example, here hydraulic dredge, then what is the minimum wage in here? What is the fringe should be? Hydraulic dredge under 20 inches, what should be for the cook? All of that for the minimum wage established in that time of project. So that, and you can see, it had to be ensure when you price in the project, ensure it have at least the minimum wage determined by the Davis-Bacon, if that is the project related to federal money and applied to certain local areas, as you can see there. So that is Davis-Bacon established the minimum wage for the federal funded project for, and it's customized for different areas, because the project work in New York, which is more expensive compared to in our areas, Fort Myers, Lee County. So that have to be determined based on the location. Then equal employment opportunity laws, disadvantaged business, women-owned business participant laws. So that is the law related to have fair competition, and when even in the bid, some state or federal funded projects, it requires some percent of participation from the disadvantaged business, business owned by minority, women owned, etc. So that have some percentage of work will perform by that project. And then the Occupational Safety and Health Act, OSHA. And what is that about? We will talk a little bit here. So the Occupational Safety and Health Act is applied to any kind of project, any kind of occupational safety and health areas, like you work in the hospital, you work on the farm, are applied in OSHA. But the part 1926, if you interest in here, apply for the engineering and construction safety and health regulation for construction, but they have other part number as well. So what is that about for OSHA? To ensure the worker and workplace safety, to make sure that employer provide their workers a place for employment free from recognized hazards to safety and health. So you see COVID, under the OSHA, employer have to provide some protections when the worker work for them. So that is to make sure the employer provide the workers free from the recognized hazard, especially the pandemic. You have it here, and in this case, ensure the safety of the worker and the workplace. So that is all OSHA about. So let's stop here, and then in the next video we will talk about building permit and how that different from the OSHA that we're talking just discussed, and then we will talking about the liability. What are the liability in the engineering and construction